This is part 3 of the X Series high-speed tutorial. In this section, we will focus on using the on-camera recording for high-speed operations. Beyond about 120 frames per second, it's difficult to fit the data down standard GigE, and even 10 GigE isn't guaranteed to give us 0 drop frames. So we'll start with the camera already connected, displayed in the leftmost window, with the camera controller open in the right window over here. If we take a look at our setup, we're at factory calibration, 10C to 90 degrees C range at 1,000 frames per second. We could choose super framing if we wanted and choose multiple presets, but the first test here we'll do with a single preset. We have pretty good focus. We can go over to on-camera recording and see the various options there. So for record mode, you have 2 options. You can record to camera RAM or to camera SSD. When the X series first came out, SSDs were not fast enough to get the full frame rate for the X6900 series, so we had to use the RAM buffer. Now we can do maximum frame rate on either an X6900 or X8500 HS, so we're not limited to the amount of RAM on the camera anymore. For this demo, we'll go to RAM just to show the process. You have to specify a file name, so we have party snaps listed here. For the test today, we're going to be looking at a calibration plate, and we're going to throw party snappers at it just to give us something high speed to look at. The next section, after recording is complete, we could begin playback if we wanted. We could save it to SSD, which I have selected. You could automatically ARM for the next recording if you want, or you could download the recording automatically. So I've chosen Save to SSD and download the recording. If I was using the record start or pickle switch to start this, I would have ARM for next recording selected, but we're not doing that right now. For duration to record, let's specify 5 seconds. If we would have chosen frames up here, we'd have to enter a frame count down there, but when we have duration, you can tell it a time, and we don't need any pre-trigger frames for this. Finally, the auto download should go to the desktop, the X6981 demo folder. So the next thing we have to do is go up and ARM for recording. So if we were to look at the back of the camera now, you would see the record start light flash on the BNC. We could use that to begin recording by giving it a switch closure or a falling edge, or we can use the record button. So in this case, I'll just use the record button to record to RAM. And let me get ready to throw the party snaps. So I'll start recording and throw my snaps. It'll finish up here with this 5-second recording. Now you can see it's copying it to SSD. Once it gets copied to SSD, now it's downloading it down the Ethernet cable over to the Windows side and putting it in the folder that we specified. And our film strip is already pointing to that folder, so we have it down here on the bottom. So let's double click the party snaps and we can open it in this window. So now live view is hidden behind this. This is the playback. We can grab the play control and just scrub across till we see something interesting. So they come in view about right here. We can grab this leftmost handle and go to about 1160. Okay, let's let it play through. It's all gone by that point. We could grab the other handle, limit our data down to just the interesting part. So this is setting our play limits. Now let's play it through. They come in the field of view. I didn't get a very centered hit, so they landed on top up there. Let's stop this, back it up to an interesting part. Okay, let's do a little bit of adjustment. Let's go grab our image enhancement and increase the slider a little bit. Now we can play it through frame by frame, do any analysis that we need. So notice these got quite warm. This is in degrees C, so the packaging is heating up to maybe 40 degrees C here. It started out about 22 degrees C, and while the poppers are exploding, it's exceeding 100 degrees C in that frame, or the 90 degrees C in that frame. That's what the red indicator is over temperature warning. Okay, so maybe we want to share this data with customers or colleagues. We can just go down here and tell it to export, and export for Research Studio Player. Then you can take this star.frs file and put it on any Windows, Linux, or Mac computer with the free FRS player and do the same analysis that we're doing here in the professional version of FLIR Research Studio. Let's go back to the camera for a moment. So let's close this file. So we're back to a live view. And let's go back to the camera and tell it to load movie. So it'll browse the contents of the SSD. And you can see here's the Party Snaps file that we took earlier. And now it's playing back from SSD. And we have a record control right here. And we can scrub through the movie and see the same view. I'm actually running via 10 gig E right now, so the playback is really nice. If you're just running single gig E, the playback isn't as great here, which is why I like to get it over on the Windows side for playback and analysis. But this is actually working really well as far as scrubbing through it goes. Let's assume we took a very large movie, maybe several minutes of data at the camera's maximum frame rate, and we don't want to download that entire thing down gigabit Ethernet back to Windows, because the interesting part was a much smaller subsection of that. Maybe a bomb was coming in and we weren't sure exactly what time it was going to arrive, so we had to record for a longer period of time. But we can scrub through the movie here and find the interesting part. So the action started at about frame 1100, because we're at 1194 right now, and most of it was over by frame, say, 1450. You can go edit the playback range, and we could start at 1100, set the current to the same, and set the end to 1450. Tell it to save this. So now we're just looking at a subsection of the data that we acquired. There's the interesting stuff. And now we want to download the smaller subsection to the PC. We can click download movie, and it has an option for frame range or entire movie. If you're on frame range, it'll automatically pick up any edits that you have in this window. So click save that. I like to tell this the frame numbers, so I will add a note, frame 1100 to 1450. Make sure it's going in the x6981 demo folder, and it is. Click save. So that transfers over really fast. And if we go hover over it down here, you can see that's 351 frames, 291 megabytes, much easier than downloading many gigabytes if you accidentally let the movie run too long on the camera side. So we've taken a look at automatically downloading from SSD via gigabit Ethernet or 10 gig E at the end of a recording. We've looked at manually loading a file from the SSD, reducing the number of frames, and manually downloading that to the Windows side. So let's take a look at the third way to get data off of the SSD, which is to physically remove it from the camera, insert it in the USB adapter, and plug that into the PC that you're using. So I've done that, and if we go to the bottom left-hand corner of FLIR Research Studio and click on the disk platter icon, you can see that it says HSDR SSD files. If we click that, we can browse the contents of that SSD. So it just has our one movie on there right now. We can open that, place it in this window, and then we can play back directly from the SSD, scrub across, find the interesting part again, whatever we want to do right there. Keep in mind that Windows cannot read the contents of this SSD. It has a special FLIR format on there that Windows doesn't recognize, so we still have to extract it from the SSD so that we'll have it on the Windows side. So we go down and use the Extract HSDR SSD File button. Go Add File. Browse the SSD, grab the file that we want. Here you can specify entire file or some frame range. If we want to do the smaller frame range again, we could do that. And we could type 1100 to 1450. If we had many files on the SSD, we could do a batch extract. That's a really handy feature. You would just keep adding files and queue them all up here. And then once you're done, we'll specify the directory you want them to go to. So let's choose our demo folder. And you could change the output file name if you wanted to here. We'll just call it USB so we know that's a little bit different. Tell it to start. And it's doing the extraction from the SSD, bring it over to the Windows side. There it is, succeeded. Now let's go back to our film strip. Close camera controller so I can see what's happening here. Close this window. Go back to my film strip. And here's our USB file. Place it in this frame. And there's the 351 frames that we were looking for. So that's the 3 different ways of getting data from the camera back to the Windows side for analysis. Final step here, if I wanted to share this with a customer or a colleague, I would just click export, and I would export for FLIR Research Studio Player, and you could download that for Windows, Linux, or Mac and do all the same analysis that we're doing here.